posted that assignment. General ideas and your, just some annotated notes. Main themes, a line or two that stood out to you as we kind of go through all of these different Federalist papers. Now, if you watch the lecture, the last lecture, which doesn't look promising based on the number of views, actually.
I watched it. I almost didn't because you posted it late, and I said you did post it.
I'm sorry.
I was like, I don't have a lecture.
You had all morning.
I was at school.
Wow, Mr. Ebright.
What is that? Yeah, we had 5 views. 5.
Grace and I watched it together.
Okay. And then I had some live.
Yeah, you guys like live. There was a lot of live.
Yeah. Okay. Well, be that as it may, this is important stuff for you when it comes to the Constitutional Convention, and then what they came up with, the compromises, right? The Virginia, New Jersey plan, the Great Compromise, the 3/5 Compromise, and the compromise on the Electoral College. The arguments of the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Okay. And obviously, one of the big ones for the Anti-Federalists, there was no Bill of Rights in this new Constitution. And so, in order to, you needed 9 of the 13 states to ratify. Okay, in order to convince them, you saw these 3 authors of the Federalist Papers. And what are their names? Hamilton, right? Madison, and Jay. Okay, and I think I did this yesterday. Okay, this is the Constitution, very small. This explains it. Okay, the Federalist Papers explain this. All right, so if you're a constitutional attorney or federal judge, it's incumbent on you to have read and understand the Federalist Papers. Okay, because they will use, the Supreme Court will use arguments made in the Federalist Papers. For instance, Federalist number 78, where it talks about judicial review, where in the Constitution, judicial review is not very explicit. You guys know what judicial review is? That's where the Supreme Court can declare laws of the legislative branch and actions of the executive branch as unconstitutional. Okay? The Supreme Court didn't interpret that power until 1803. With the court case in 1803 that established the principle of judicial review called, what was the name of that court case? Starts with an M. Not Monroe.
Is this the one where the guy who went to stay?
M and M.
Miller.
Marbury versus Madison, 1803. So guys, John Jay is actually the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He quits because he has no power. John Jay and the rest of the Supreme Court, they don't have their own building. They're in the unfinished basement of the Capitol. Okay, they're like, why am I here? I'll go become the governor of New York. Okay, so it's not until 1803 that we see that. But where does the Supreme Court make that decision based on what was written in the Federalist Papers? Okay, so that kind of shows you the importance of what you're going to be reading tonight, or tomorrow, or Friday before you come to school, Thursday before you come to school. Okay, now we need 9 of the 13 colonies, right? And I don't know if I talked about this yesterday. Tell me if I'm repeating myself. Delaware was the first state, okay, and New Hampshire was the 9th state, okay, and Virginia and New York were deeply divided. The Federalist Papers worked there. Washington and Jefferson threw their support behind the Constitution, and that helped Virginia ratify it. And then there were the 3 states I think I put up there, right? Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Virginia that demanded a Bill of Rights. Yes? Okay, now, What's interesting, guys, is Madison, who's a Federalist, and doesn't feel we need a Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Does anybody know what job he gets? His first job with the new government? Madison? He's the first Speaker of the House. Okay? So Madison, who didn't think we needed a Bill of Rights, will help author the Bill of Rights. And really, that's a pretty good dude to have writing the Bill of Rights, don't you think, Madison? Based on what you know about him? So, the Federalist Papers do work in New York, and the Constitution is going to be ratified. Okay? So that brings us to our next subject. And that's the basics of the U.S. Constitution. The basics of the U.S. Constitution. That's your next header. There are 7 articles in the U.S. Constitution. The first 3 are the 3 branches of government. Article 1, here's a quick reference over here, legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. Now, the last half of this class, or third of this class, will be covering the 3 branches of government. Okay, and we can do that pretty quickly, right, because you guys are smart and it's not rocket science. It's all black and white. You know what I mean? It's just facts. Okay, it doesn't take a lot of creativity to learn the basics of the 3 branches. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to skip over that. Okay, now you know the basics, right? There's bicameral legislature, the House and the Senate, yes, and they pass bills, they pass laws. The executive carries out the law, enforces it. They have the sword, the legislator have the purse, and then the judicial branch settles disputes, makes decisions on what is legal and what is not. Okay? Now, so we're going to jump to Article 4 of the Constitution, all right? And Article 4 is a very important article, and there are some clauses that we're going to dig into. The first of these clauses is the full faith and credit clause. Write that down. Full faith and credit. Okay, so guys, there's 2 types of laws in the United States. 2 types of law. You have criminal law and you got civil law. Civil law deals with relationships between people. Criminal law deals with people in the state. When people violate the law, that's called a crime. Okay, but when we violate each other's, okay, in one fashion or another, then we can get civil law. Okay, so civil laws deal with relationships. All right, now, Article 4 of the Constitution with full faith and credit says that one state must recognize another state's official documents. One state must recognize another state's official document. I'm going to give you a really easy example here. And I assume all of you have one of these, but I'm not sure. A driver's license. Driver's license. How long you got a driver's license? Are you a good driver?
Oh, yeah, I can attest.
You know what they say about, Asian drivers. Especially women, Asian drivers. I have one of those in my household, so I can make fun of that guy. So, no, Lily does a pretty good job. She's cautious. She's good. That's what I want. Okay? Not aggressive, like my son. But you guys understand defensive driving, right? Yeah. Okay, here's my deal. If I'm driving faster than everybody else, then I don't have to worry about anything that's behind me. I just got to worry about what's in front of me. If I'm driving slow, then I got to worry about what's behind me and in front of me. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
This is already getting dangerous.
Exactly, you have to watch the cars.
You should, I check my windows like every.
You gotta
second.
check the
I'm like-
In front of you. Yeah. Everything that's out here in your peripheral.
I know, but there's probably cops behind you.
Like when they pull up on the ramps, like on the highway, I check every ramp. I'm like, I'm not being pulled over.
All right. So, guys, you can use that Kansas driver's license in any of the other 49 states. No questions asked. Okay? When you get married, you're going to get a marriage certificate. Okay? And you can take that marriage certificate and move to another state. I was married in one of the most corrupt state capitals of the 50 state capitals. That's Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Okay? Known for a lot of corruption down there in Louisiana. But even though there's corruption in Louisiana, Kansas still has to recognize my marriage. Okay? Now, you guys remember at the beginning of this class when we talked about gay marriage and we talked about the Defense of Marriage Act, when Massachusetts became the first state to allow gay marriages. Congress passed a law saying that Kansas and other states do not have to recognize that gay marriage from Massachusetts. Well, that law, as I told you at the time, was unconstitutional, yes? Based on the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. Okay? Everybody knew it was unconstitutional. Congress knew it was unconstitutional. They passed it anyway. It took the Supreme Court 10 years to overturn that law. Okay? It's pretty interesting. Guys, the Supreme Court will generally only hear cases that they feel the American people are ready to hear. So if you talk about abortion, right, and overturning Roe v. Wade, okay, what that's going to take for the Supreme Court to do that is to see a movement in this country where the majority of people, not just a slim majority, but a strong majority of people want to see abortion abolished. You following me? They will not act until we are ready to act. You look at Jim Crow laws, right? We talk about the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment gives equal protection under the law to all citizens. Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896 said separate can be equal. That stood till 1954. And guys, all you had to do was open your eyes to know that separate was not equal. You know what I mean? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But the Supreme Court waited until they felt the country was ready for that decision to be made. You know what I mean? Okay. Sometimes they push the envelope. Okay. But usually in the other direction. Okay. So, same thing with gay marriage. I mean, they waited and waited and waited. Okay, on gay marriage. Now, we can debate the merits of their decisions and the Constitution, what they use to make their decisions. We can debate that, just not today. Okay. So with that, these are like civil laws. Your driver's license, your marriage license, these are civil relationships, okay, between the government and people and states, okay? So contracts that people have in one state have to be recognized by another state as well, okay? The second clause we're going to talk about is privileges and immunities. This is also found in Article 4. Okay? So, we don't refer to ourselves as citizens of Kansas. We refer to ourselves as what? No, in the state of Kansas. We're not a citizen of Kansas, we are a, what? Resident. We are a resident, okay? And as a resident of the state of Kansas, we have certain privileges. Like, if you attend a state university in the state of Kansas, you pay what kind of tuition? Okay? If you go out of state, you pay what kind of tuition? Out of state. Why? I mean, there's some logic to it. Yeah, you haven't been paying taxes in the other states. You've been paying taxes in this state, so you have the privilege of attending state universities at in-state tuition levels, okay? Now, I ran into this when I moved to Kansas. I had a business degree back from 1991 when I was playing college baseball from the Georgia Southwestern University, okay? After a few years in the private sector, I decided to go back to school and become a teacher and a coach. About the same time, I met my bride-to-be, and we moved to Louisiana. I mean, we moved from Louisiana to Kansas in December of '95. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back and be a teacher. What am I going to teach? Do I want to teach business? Well, the only way you could get that certification was through Friends, and that was a private school. And I was like, I don't really want to teach business anyways. I like history. I'm going to teach history. So I enrolled at Wichita State University in January of '96. Okay. I got a job. I was working at least 20 hours a week and going to school full time. Okay. And now I wasn't married yet, but I'd moved to Kansas. And I figured after I did, 12 months full time at, student and working, paying taxes in Kansas. When I went to re-enroll in January of '97, they said I had to pay out-of-state tuition again. I'm like, well, hold on now. Okay, because this is January '97. I'm getting married in March down in Baton Rouge. Okay, so we're going to go back down to Baton Rouge and get married. So our friends and family. Okay, so and what am I studying? I'm getting a Kansas teaching license, which is only good in the state of Kansas. Why would I move here from Louisiana or Florida to go to Wichita State to get a Kansas teaching license to take it back to Louisiana or Florida? Is it because Wichita State has one of the best education programs in the nation? No, because they don't. Now, Emporia State, maybe. They're known for their teacher program. Seriously, it's one of the best in the country. Okay, but I wasn't at Emporia State. Okay, and so they said pay out-of-state tuition. I'm like, what? So I went through all the appeals and everything and said sorry. So did I. I said sorry. See ya. Okay, and I left. And I went to Newman because really the cost of tuition in Newman was only about, I don't know, $30 more an hour than Wichita State, out of state. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, you know what? These people are idiots. I don't need an education from these idiots. I'm going to a different school. So that's, you know what I said. Okay? And I could finish at Newman a semester earlier. Okay, so I get my teaching license. Okay, and I got a job here. I student taught here for Mr. Finkeldye and Mrs. Berry. Yeah, Mrs. Berry is a sub, not this year, but maybe last year. Older lady, mean. Yeah. Mr. Finkeldye, you guys know who that is? He's the assistant superintendent. Okay, really smart guy. His name's on the book you have for this class. Dr. Finkeldye. Okay. All right. Anyhow, so what the heck? Okay, so you know what I did? Since I wasn't a resident of the state of Kansas, I could vote here, but I kept my tags from Florida on my, I had a Ford Explorer at the time, for like 2 years. Because all you have to do in Florida, it's really cheap to, do your tags. So, Dad, renew my tags. It's like $50. In Kansas, you have to pay your tags based on the value of your vehicle. So if you buy a new vehicle, your tags are expensive. Okay, if you got an old beater, it's cheap. You know what I mean? So I just, stick it to the main. I'm not, I'm not a resident. I don't get in-state tuition. I'm leaving my Florida tag. I had a job here for like 6 months. People are like, why do you have Florida tags? So, well, let me tell you a story about privileges and immunities. Okay. Now, other privileges, like voting is a privilege in a state if you establish residency, right? And then immunities, look, when we travel from state to state, okay, you have to be treated like anybody else. Even if if you don't live in that state, they can't mistreat you. You understand? Now, you are supposed to be aware of the laws in that state. If you're traveling somewhere to a different state, it's your responsibility to know the laws there. Ignorance is not a defense here. So let me give you an example. Should I not give you? I like giving examples. Kansas is an open carry state. You can get a gun, buy a gun, and carry it around. Just not at a school. Okay, don't bring it to school. Okay, but if you're driving across country, you better know the gun laws in each of those states. Because if you show up in Illinois, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, and you're carrying your 9mm in your car with you, and you get pulled over by a state trooper. Okay, you could go to jail. So before you get to the border in Illinois, you get out of your car, you dismantle your weapon, and put it in the trunk. And then when you get through Illinois and into Indiana, you can put it back together again. Okay. You got to know the laws, okay? And then another thing is, you know how when people commit a crime, sometimes they'll like flee the state and try and get away from the cops. I don't know if any of you guys ever saw Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
You have seen that?
Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty old, but it's funny. It's fabulous, actually. The car, fabulous. But anyhow, they're running from the cops, and Sheriff Buford D. Justice is chasing them. He's a Texas Ranger, chasing this bandit. Okay, and look, let's say I commit armed robbery in Wichita, and I get on 35 and just head south towards Oklahoma, 135, and I'm running from the cops, and I make it to Oklahoma. Can they follow me into Oklahoma? Cops have a driver's license too. They can go drive in Oklahoma. They can't arrest you in Oklahoma, but they can follow you. Okay, they do not have jurisdiction. But what they can do is radio ahead to Oklahoma State Troopers and say, hey, we're chasing this guy that's wanted for armed robbery. Will you please stop him? Okay, so they stop me. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm like, what's up? So you're wanted on a crime. And so can they just hand me back to the Kansas State Troopers? No. There's a process called what? Extradition. Okay? So what's going to happen here, guys, is the governor of Kansas is going to call the governor of Oklahoma and say, hey, you guys are holding this guy that's wanted on armed robbery in Wichita. We would like to extradite them. And there's a process you go through, and they hand it back. Okay. Now, if you're like, what's those two people, the guy and the girl, the bandit, Bonnie and Clyde. So you're on a cross-country crime spree. All right, and you finally get caught. Where are they going to send you first? Well, they'll probably send you to the state where you committed the worst crime first. Okay. or the state that has you may want to get you first. Okay. And then they'll extradite you from one state to another so you can stand trial for all of those crimes. Okay. Now, what about fleeing the country? What if you make it to Mexico or Canada? Well, you sneak across.
Good.
Guys, we have extradition treaties with most countries in the world today. Okay. There are a few we do not, but you're probably better off in a federal prison in the United States than you are in, say, I don't know, North Korea or Iran. Okay. So be careful about where you flee to. Okay. Now, financial crimes, you guys hear about Swiss banks, stuff like that. Okay. So some countries are tougher to work with on this. Okay. And if you know the story of what's his name, that fled to Russia, Snowden. Yeah. I mean, Russia has not, extradited. Okay. Canada has actually refused to extradite people that were draft dodgers from Vietnam, and people that were being charged with the death penalty in the United States. So one of the conditions that the Canadians may have is, say you're from Kansas and you're wanted for the death penalty here, they may say, if you waive the death penalty, we'll extradite. But if you don't, we're not going to extradite the person to be killed by the state of Kansas. Okay. So it's kind of interesting, these relationships with extradition. Okay. Probably giving you way too much information. Okay. If you're thinking of committing a heinous crime and fleeing the country, you might look up where you might be able to run. Heinous crime. All right. Okay, that kind of sums up privileges and full faith and credit. Can you guys give me a short answer on these on the test?
Like a short.
Yeah, short answer.
Short.
2-pointer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Other things we find in Article 4, which it's kind of defined, they don't do this in the Constitution, but it's interstate and federal relations. Okay, that's what we're dealing with here. Interstate and federal relations. Okay. So the next one is before Kansas was a state, Kansas was a what? A territory. Okay, so the requirements for a territory becoming a state are in Article 4. And I know you all remember from last year in history class, you learned about how many people had to live in a territory in order for it to become a state. Sometimes people remember this number. How many people had to live in a territory for it to become a state? Guess. 1,000? No.
550,000.
Okay, now you're getting closer. Wrong direction.
37.
All right,
60,000.
60,000. Okay, 60,000 people have to live in a territory for it to become a state. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to give you this, okay, for the heck of it. Okay, so that territory has to write a constitution. Okay, that constitution have to have a representative government. Okay, then they will. That's called. This is the Enabling Act. So this is what will happen if Puerto Rico or District of Columbia become a state. Okay, the Enabling Act. Okay, they have to write a state constitution, have a representative government, and then for Congress to accept them, you have an act of admission. Okay, so every state since the original 13 has gone through this process. Okay, you got to have 60,000 people. You have to have representative government. Okay. And your people want to become a state. So like Puerto Rico, they have actually held votes in Puerto Rico for the people there, whether they want to become a state or not. Okay. And those votes are very close. They kind of get the benefits of, being part of the United States, but don't have to pay the full amount for the benefits. You know what I mean? So they may, regret it if they become a state. Okay. But anyhow, they also, okay, let me give you another header. We're still in Article 4. The national government has certain obligations. National government has certain obligations to the states. And one obligation they have is that every state must have a representative government. Okay. That's something they have to guarantee the people, the citizens of this country, that the state they live in has a representative government. Here's another one. The national government is obliged to protect the states from invasion. So if we're invaded by Canadians, national government has an obligation to defend the states. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. And this may depend on your political views. Okay. Let's say that tens of thousands of people are breaking into your state from Mexico. You live in Arizona or Texas, and tens of thousands of people are breaking into the state. They're coming into your state, and the national government is not preventing it. Are they abdicating their responsibility in Article 4 of the Constitution? Okay, and these are debates we have because Arizona, a few years ago, they had a governor named, her name was Brewer, and she's like, federal government's not doing its job. So then the state started to do the job of immigration. And the federal government said, no, not so fast. That's not your power, that's our power. Okay, and the Supreme Court will back up the federal government on that. States are not allowed to do immigration. As we'll learn, we'll get to some of these different powers, okay? So it's interesting. All right, here's another one. Domestic violence. Okay, if there's domestic violence, the federal government has an obligation to help protect. This is where we generally see the National Guard called in. Okay. And last obligation that we see the national government has to the states is respect for territorial integrity. Territorial integrity. The U.S. government cannot change the border of Kansas without our permission. Okay. Now, one good example here is during the Civil War. Virginia seceded from the Union. And since they were no longer part of the Union, the federal government decided to change its borders by breaking it in half and creating West Virginia. Okay. All right. It was a big state, and they chopped it, okay? But since they left, they didn't have to respect their territorial integrity. Now we have West Virginia. You guys ever been to West Virginia? It's pretty. Some areas. I mean, it's mountainous, hilly. Okay. I know there's a lot of, it's kind of like people think around here about like Arkansas, you know what I mean? West Virginia, Arkansas, yeah. Okay. All right, so I think that's good enough for today. We will look at Article 5 tomorrow, which is amending the Constitution. which you definitely want to pay attention for. And then Article 6, and then we're going to start learning the amendments. Okay? So I'm not sure how I'm actually going to do that with this. Okay? But we're going to expedite. We're not going to, I can't just stop, like do it the same thing back-to-back days. I can't do it. It'll drive me crazy. Okay? I can't teach the same thing 2 days in a row. It's physically impossible. Actually, I'm going to be doing it with actually, you know what we're doing Thursday and Friday is talking about the Federalist Papers. That's what we're doing. Monday and Tuesday, we'll go over the other articles, 5 and 6 and 7. Cool? So read those. They're good. I mean, they're actually good. I promise you. These Federalist Papers you're going to read. They're good. Y'all have a good day. Oh, I hope I recorded.